Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Empathic Leader, where we talk all things empathy, EQ, and leadership. My name is Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller. I am your host, and I'm so happy to have you here. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment so we can keep this conversation going. If empathy is about connection and understanding, then the more connection and understanding we can create by bringing this out to the wider world, the better it's going to be. And no one would understand that better than my audience. In a lot of the speaking I've been doing lately, I get a lot of questions about the difference between empathy, sympathy, and compassion. And I know we've spent a little bit of time on this, but I want to spend time today specifically talking about the difference between empathy and compassion. We tend to roll all three of these things up in like this ball of feel good, right? Empathy, sympathy, compassion. But if you just walked up to someone and said, what's the difference? They'd probably go, I don't know. They just all go together. So I want to take the time today to actually suss out what each one is and why it's important that we know the difference. Not that just we do, but that it's important. And I think the best place to start with this is with definitions. Because we should all be starting from the same point, or else it's really hard to have an intelligent conversation. Empathy, as my audience has heard before, say it with me, is about understanding and connection. The I feel what you're feeling is part of it, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Because there's cognitive empathy, where we connect and understand with our brains, right? There's self-empathy, where we understand and connect with ourselves, which can be harder than it seems if we're dealing with a lot of self-judgment and layers of emotions. Empathy is about understanding and connecting. Let's take emotional empathy just as an example, right? In that case, it's about feeling the feelings, understanding the feelings by feeling them yourself. But empathy is passive. It's what Brené Brown calls being in the suck, because you're just there, you feel the feelings. You don't do anything. You take no action. You're not trying to fix anything. You're not taking responsibility. You're not passing judgment. You don't do anything. You just feel the feelings. That's it. Now, say we're dealing with a dark emotion, right? We're feeling something that's grief or depression. That will often, in turn, cause us to have a feeling of discomfort because nobody wants to feel that. That's why empathy takes courage. We're taking it on, even though we know it's going to be uncomfortable. When this happens, we're often motivated to take action, and that action is called compassion. Compassion is all about action. Empathy is completely passive. Empathy is what you feel. Compassion is what you do. Now, here's the important distinction. You can have empathy without compassion, right? You may know someone that you have all the empathy for in the world, but you don't take any action. And there may be a lot of reasons for this. No action may actually be the best path. You may want to jump in and fix things for them, but it's better if they figure it out on their own. Empathy is completely passive. And compassion doesn't have to follow. Now let's flip that. What would happen if you had compassion without first connecting with that other person? You might be offering them solutions or trying to fix or trying to comfort or trying to help that actually don't help. You're taking action and you're going in and you're trying to change things without first understanding them, which means your action, compassionate action, with the best of intentions, could end up doing more harm than good. You can have empathy without compassion. You can also have compassion without empathy. And this can create problems. Sympathy is kind of off on its own little thing. It ends up in this feel-good ball of awesomeness, but it doesn't really belong there because in sympathy, we're not really relating to the other person on their terms. We're relating to the other person on our terms, which means often we bring in an element of judgment. We see them through our eyes, so we're comparing and judging their situation to ours. in medical situations, medical professionals are trained not to use sympathy because of this negative connotation. Think about it. If you're a patient, the last thing that you want when you are potentially on the worst day of your life is to have someone approach you with judgment or pity, which is a kind of judgment that, oh, your situation's so bad. I'm glad it's not me. And these are things we just do. It's not intentional. It's just how it works. But sympathy has nothing to do with empathy because it has a judgment component. And empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space, right? So we're going to leave sympathy out over here for now. We're just going to talk empathy and compassion today. Let's start by thinking about empathy and compassion on a global scale. Often you see people coming up with solutions to large-scale disasters, economic disasters, war, famine, and they're very compassionate about it. But empathy tends to be less sensitive to large numbers of victims. We talked about this in the last episode. So if you want to know more about that, go ahead and check it out. The point is that because we're looking at large numbers of people, it can be more difficult to use empathy, which means that instead of doing the difficult thing and trying to use empathy, people will just throw what they think are compassionate solutions out there. And they can end up doing more harm than good, even though the intent is nothing but good. An example would be if we sent foreign aid to be able to help starving people somewhere, but we sent it to a country where we didn't actually understand and connect first. So we didn't understand that what would happen is the person in charge of their country really didn't care about their people and wasn't going to allow this foreign aid to go into food for the people who need it. They were going to keep it to line their own pockets. They were going to keep it to be able to fund conflict. They were going to use it for very personal narcissistic reasons. Our intention was good and the compassionate action was there. But because the empathy wasn't first displayed to be able to connect and understand, the compassion fell flat. And in fact, probably did more harm than good in some ways. Another example of this is where if we're trying to talk to a culture, but we're not being sensitive to that culture. We're wanting to be compassionate, we're wanting to help, but we haven't taken the time to understand what that culture is and connect with the people. We want them to do it our way. We want compassion our way. You go in and you end up doing more harm than good. The connection and the understanding is the important part for compassion. Otherwise, you can throw out what you think is good action, and maybe it'll land. Maybe it'll do what you intended to do. But maybe it won't because you haven't connected first. So you're just kind of throwing it out there blindly and hoping for the best. Still the best of intentions, potentially very different results. Hey, Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller here, and I wanted to let you know that my new book, The Empathic Leader, How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation, is on pre-sale on Amazon now. Hard copy will come out June 15th, and I'm so excited that this is finally coming to fruition. Please go to Amazon, buy your pre-sale Kindle copy. We'll see you there. Let's talk about this in organizations, because again, we're dealing with larger groups of people. Organizations do a lot of things that they see as compassionate for their employees, that are supposed to boost morale, that is supposed to help everybody feel better. But without connecting first, this can actually do a lot more harm than good. Here's an example. And please, I hope nobody will take this the wrong way, but we've all seen it pop up in memes and jokes about the pizza party. I used to work for a healthcare facility where the head of the department, the director, was just determined that what we needed was another pizza party. But she never asked. She never asked why morale was low. She never connected. She never tried to understand why people were leaving that job left and right. It was always a revolving door. She just thought by showing compassion and throwing money into it and oh, I appreciate you, have some pizza, that it would fix it. But she never took into account that one of the people who was feeling marginalized had celiac. She couldn't eat pizza. And she really didn't want to eat anything she didn't bring herself. That the executive assistant was always overloaded having to order this and make sure everybody was happy and probably cart it in and set it up and tear it down and clean it up. This wasn't a good thing for this person. It was more work. That these people didn't really want to spend their lunch hour with each other, that they wanted to be able to do what they needed to do, whether it was to get out and go for a walk or take care of stuff with their kids or I knew one of them that would run out and go grocery shopping during her lunch hour. Because this director didn't take the time to understand and connect with her people first, she was throwing out this compassionate idea with the best of intent and not understanding that it was actually lowering morale. I found out after the fact that the executive assistant would actually plan doctor's appointments during these just so that she didn't have to take on yet more work. The empathy has to come first. If you don't connect and understand, the compassion runs the risk of falling very flat, especially if you keep doing the same compassionate thing over and over and over again and don't understand that it falls flat every single time. People just saw her as tone deaf. And she didn't understand. It left her confused and kind of hurt because she thought she was trying to do something wonderful and she just didn't get it. But she had to take the time to understand and connect first. And as a director, no one was going to go and tell her this. She needed to ask. It's the responsibilities of leadership. Being in connection with your people so that you understand and you don't end up blindsided. So let's go a little bit closer to home, right? We looked globally, we looked organizationally. Let's talk about couples for just a second, because this is one that has actually come up a couple times, and it kind of makes me chuckle because it's really true. You know, the stereotype of the woman that just wants to be heard and the guy that just wants to get in and fix things. I mean, it's not always a woman and man, but you know, that one partner just wants to be heard and understood and the other partner is just action-based, right? The person who wants to be heard wants empathy. They want someone to be in the suck, right? I just want you to listen. I just want to feel heard. I just want to feel seen. That's it. They don't actually want any action. They want empathy without compassion. The other partner is throwing compassion right in there because they think it's going to help and they're going to fix it and they're going to change it and they're going to make it all better. But because they haven't used empathy first, that compassion is falling flat and they don't know why. They just know it's not working. And this can end up in big arguments. I mean, I had to kind of laugh because I had a friend who was talking to me about this and she's like, well, what about relationships? And it was like, yeah, well, I had this happen with my husband and it's so cliche, but this is what happened. And in her mind, she's like, I don't understand why he can't understand. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, we got empathy over here. We have compassion over there. And it's not, they're crossing. You're not using both. So think about it logically, right? If your partner needs to be heard, if they just want you to be in the suck with them, right? As Brene Brown says, that's it. Empathy is passive. That's really all they want. And that can be hard if you're an action taker and you want to get in and you want to fix it. But just be in the suck with them and handle feeling that discomfort, right? The response to feeling hard emotions is from somebody else is that you're going to feel that discomfort, and cognitively as well. But you just have to feel that discomfort and understand that you're giving empathy. Because if you immediately just jump in and try and fix things and you're going to rip and you're going to tear and you're going to make it all better, that's compassion without empathy. And that compassion can do more harm than good, even though the best of intentions are there. We see this played out all the time in couples relationships and in other ways as well, where one person just needs to be understood and the other person immediately jumps in and takes action. My poor husband, who you hear about a lot, falls into this category. And he means well. But unfortunately, because he doesn't take the time to understand first, he'll jump in and just start trying to fix things and destroy them. This happened at one point with a move that we had. We had to move out of a house out on the West Coast. And I needed someone to listen to what I was saying and understand how overwhelmed I was with this move. But instead, he jumped in and just started ripping through things and packing boxes and putting stuff together and And it made me so angry I actually had to leave. And unfortunately, because he didn't listen to me first, he didn't understand that I had this handled, that I knew what was going on with this. I just needed him to understand how overwhelmed I was. And I had some stuff that actually got broken because he was so fixated on taking action that he didn't understand I just needed to be heard. So what are the common denominators here, right? Because we could take this up and down the scale, large groups, small groups, couples, to yourself, that having that self-empathy means understanding and connecting with yourself before you jump in with what might look like compassion, right? Think about it this way. How many people have you heard that are like, I deserve this meal out, or I deserve to treat myself and pamper myself in this way? But they do it, and they don't actually feel any better afterwards. They've taken compassionate action. They're trying to do good things for themselves or things they think will make them feel better, but they didn't understand and connect with themselves first. So the compassion they're showing may actually do more harm than good, be it to the checkbook or to the waistline or to life in general. I used to do that. Oh my goodness, this has been such a horrible, well, I shouldn't say used to. I mean, we all fall victim to it. But this was such a terrible week. I deserve this glass of wine. But after a glass of wine or two or whatever, I didn't actually feel any better. I thought I was showing myself compassion, but I hadn't connected to the underlying emotions in myself to understand myself through self-empathy first. So the compassion was doing more harm than good. It wasn't a treat. It was a means of numbing. So, what's the through line here? Empathy and compassion go together. Sympathy is out there in left field somewhere. It actually is negative in a lot of ways. So we actually are not going to put it in the ball of feel good, even though society does. You can have empathy without compassion. You just feel the feelings and don't do anything. You can also have compassion without empathy. But unfortunately, it means you're just throwing things into a dark hole and hoping they hit. And you can do more harm than good. And the overarching theme through all of this isn't hurt, it isn't anger, it isn't fear or any other emotion. People end up confused. Well, I thought I was giving you something that was great. Well, I thought all I was asking you to do was just listen. Well, I don't understand why the pizza parties aren't working. Don't my people know that I care? People end up confused. They don't understand why compassion without empathy isn't working. The solution is to remember that you start with empathy. If you can't feel the feelings, if you can't connect with the other person, then any compassion you give might work, but it also might be slightly off, or it might be off completely, or worse yet, it might do more harm than good, which is the opposite of what you intended to do by showing compassion in the first place. Take the time, connect and understand. You may not have to go any further. The best thing that you could do might be to do nothing at all. But understand these are two different entities that don't necessarily go together, that don't necessarily intermesh with each other. They're just part of us being human beings and trying to understand and relate to one another. Start with the definition. Understand what you're working with. and then use it effectively. Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller here. So glad to have had you along on the ride for all things empathy, emotional intelligence, and leadership. My book is coming out soon. We'll be putting stuff in the comments. And please do like, subscribe, and comment, because I really do want this conversation to go around the world. Many thanks to everyone and to the listeners that have been asking me questions and putting out good comments. Let's keep it rocking, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.